everyone, and welcome back to Growing Kentucky's Leaders. I am one of your hosts, Sheldon McKinney.
And I'm your other host, Ruth Ann Fink.
And today we have with us a legend in Kentucky agriculture who is still leading and putting Kentucky agriculture's best foot forward all the time. We have Mr. David Beck. He is a Lyon County FFA alumni. He's a past Kentucky FFA state officer. He had an outstanding career with Kentucky Farm Bureau, but now he is the president and CEO of Kentucky Venues, which has just a huge impact on Kentucky in many more ways than you think. And so I'll let him tell you more. But Mr. Beck, why don't you introduce yourself? Welcome to the podcast and tell us about how your journey with FFA began. Let's go back and talk about the beginning.
Well, thank you for those real kind remarks. And it's good to see both of you today. And congratulate you for what you do with FFA. You have a huge impact on young people around the Commonwealth on a daily basis, and I get to see the results of that. So I want to say thank you for all that you do, and thank you for having the podcast. There's never enough information out there so everybody can share and learn, and hopefully encourage others to be engaged even a different level in the future. So I was very fortunate as a young man being able to participate in FFA. My father had been involved, and cousins, and a lot of our family. So it was a natural path for me, being very interested in production agriculture. So it was a wonderful experience. I was fortunate to have wonderful vocational agriculture teachers, people that really cared about you, made a difference in your life, encouraged you, motivated you, gave me an opportunity to see a lot of things, not just in my home community, but around the state and around the country. So it was a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah. I think maybe something special that people don't know is that your father-in-law was also an agriculture teacher who inspired a lot of folks as well. So you have FFA on both sides.
Yes, my father-in-law was a WAG teacher for many years, a very respected man, Mr. Stanley Debo, but also served as an adult farm teacher for 3 counties, Lyon, Trigg, and Cowell. So a good man and a good leader in agriculture.
Yeah.
Well, we would definitely want to talk more about how FFA has influenced your career, but it is really important for our listeners to know what you do. I think a lot of people see you at all kinds of events, but it's like, what are all the things that he does? And the Kentucky State Fair is going on. We have a lot of FFA members that will be at the Kentucky State Fair in lots of different capacities, between contests or maybe showing their own livestock, having exhibits either in Cloverville or in Ag Land with FFA as well. So lots of involvement going on there. As the CEO of Kentucky Venues, the fair is really just one of many events both that the Expo Center hosts and engages with throughout the year. So tell us more about Kentucky Venues, the impact that your team has on those facilities and on Kentucky in general.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. I've been around the facilities for many years. I actually attended as a young person FFA judging and showing and being engaged like that. I actually toured behind the scenes of the Kentucky Exposition Center, as you mentioned a while ago, as a state officer. That was very interesting. It was hard to envision that someday I would be involved in the facilities. But when I retired from Kentucky Farm Bureau, they offered me this opportunity to be engaged. And even though I had used facilities, I knew tourism was important, but I didn't really realize how many people it touched. I'm very proud of our staff team and our facilities. Just to give you an example, this past year, we had 7.2 million people that came through our doors. We had 6.3 million people coming through the Exposition Center and 930,000 going through the Convention Center in downtown Louisville. Last year, we had 370 events on a property. That's an increase of about 40 over the previous year. We operated 363 days out of the 365. We broke all records last year. Our staff team did. So I've been teasing them that this year's leap year. So we got one more day to even increase those records for the future in 24. But it's exciting. We estimate a little over $400 million economic impact. Even though we have lots of events, we have people moving in and out every day at both properties. Agriculture is our focus. We own and operate 6 individual shows, all agricultural based, but also have other agricultural events. So from a board standpoint, from a management standpoint, agriculture is a priority. And so we book a lot of different events nationwide, worldwide in our facilities. In fact, last year we had over 110 countries represented on our property that I know of. So we do touch a lot of people around the world. An opportunity to tell the story of agriculture is important to us, and that continues to be a focus.
Yeah, the Kentucky Exposition Center hosts a lot of events our members and our listeners are familiar with. Obviously, the Kentucky State Fair, National Farm Machinery Show are two of the biggest that they probably attend. But what are some of the events that are hosted in these two spaces that maybe have surprised you or have been fun to work with that you never thought you'd get to work with before?
Well, I say this, and we tease a lot about this. My wife, particularly, I've attended more concerts in the last 4 or 5 years than I have my entire life. So we have a lot of music events. In the fall, in September, we have the Bourbon Beyond and Louder Than Life. We had about 325,000 people in just for those 2 weekends this past year, with about 28 countries represented in every state in the union. We have a lot of the largest trade shows in the world here. We're very competitive. We're one of the top 5 or 6 for its actual space available indoor and outdoor for events. But I think we fight above our weight. We're able to recruit. We compete with cities everywhere. We can have a table for 2, or we can serve 15,000 for a sit-down meal. So anywhere in between. So that's been amazing to me. For example, this past week, we've had representatives of all the legislatures in all 50 states present in Louisville, Kentucky at our convention center. We have a lot of entertainers that come through. We have a lot of professional business groups that come through of all different types, manufacturing, construction, you name it. We host a lot of medical meetings and events. So it's quite an opportunity to touch base with a lot of people. For example, my very first week in this role, we had the state 4-H horse shoulder property. We had the youth swine conference. And it reminds me, walking through the barn, you got all these state signs. It's like going to the Democrat Republican convention. You see the signs from where people are. Also, we had basketball. We had a little over 100 basketball courts set up on our property. So we have the ability with 1.2 million square feet of climate controlled contiguous space around our exposition center to be a host of lots of events at the very same time. But we've outgrown our events too, our space. And we now have some of our clients using both properties at the very same time, both downtown as well as the exposition center.
Wow.
It really is incredible how many people have been to Kentucky because they were visiting the Fair and Expo Center. And that was the reason they came. And it's an incredible place that if you've grown up here and you've always went to State Fair there and you've always got to go to the National Farm Machinery Show right out your back door, you don't really realize how lucky we are to have such a gem of a property in our state that puts our best forward.
It has a huge impact on our economy. And one of the things that I focus a lot of my attention on, I serve on various boards around the state and in our community, is to tell the story of agriculture and show the connection to agriculture and what we do. One of my focuses has been to bring a lot of elected leaders at all levels of government to our property. And I think we bridged that gap pretty good. I'll give you an example. We now have some of the business organizations in their policy books that they work for in Washington, Frankfurt. They now include us, recognizing the value that these facilities have and agriculture has on our economy. To me, that's bridging that rural-urban divide. We think about the Kentucky State Fair. This year is the 120th. We have representatives from all 120 counties participating. That's a goal of mine. If you come through the gate and just come through without buying your tickets in advance, we're not really sure where you came from. But if you buy your tickets in advance online, we can track the counties, not just in Kentucky, but around the country. And I look at that map and I see where tickets are purchased. So it's always my goal is make sure we have representatives from all 120 counties. And we've been able to accomplish that. This past year, we had about 630,000 people came in for the state fair. We had an increase in attendance of 14%. We had an increase in exhibitors 7%. So another goal we have, I want young people in Kentucky to be able to have the same experience as I did. I think it makes a huge difference as they develop and grow and have those educational experiences. So I say we're the largest classroom in the Commonwealth. We have about 30 different schools that use our facility for graduation. So we hand out a lot of diplomas. but it's educational for young people as well as the adults or family members that accompany them to the various events.
Well, I
No.
learned something today. I did not know that. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, I went to 2 years ago, I went to a Lego convention at the Kentucky State Fairgrounds. So that was the first time I had been there really away from agriculture. While I was there was a huge volleyball event next door too. So you have people all the time.
You know, we'll have these different diverse backgrounds coming together, but many times they're sharing the very same food court. They may walk through the livestock barn, and some of these kids may have never even had a chance to see animals live in person like that. So it's educational, and we get a lot of questions. You'd be amazed, probably wouldn't know surprise you though, about the kind of questions we have about agriculture. So it's a way to bridge that gap. I want to say something else. Some of these buildings are as old as I am. And I'm so pleased that the Kentucky General Assembly has been supportive of what we do. They committed $260 million this budget year. Last budget, they did about 240. So you're talking about almost $500 million to be invested in the Kentucky Exposition Center. To me, that's a major, major investment that they're making because they understand the economic impact. And they just don't write a check. We present as a business plan. As a taxpayer, I appreciate that approach. We present a business plan, show return on investment, and we hold accountability back to the General Assembly that we use those dollars wisely. So I think, again, that's provided an opportunity for rural and urban to come together and have these facilities in place to impact our economy, but also for future generations to benefit from these life-changing experiences.
Yeah. That's certainly true. And you can tell that you all have made investments in the property. It continues to get better and better every year. So I want to ask you, you lead a very large, very talented team. You don't run these 370 events on your own. You're a leader of a lot of people. You host millions of people a year. You work with sponsors, with government officials. You've mentioned the General Assembly. You work with celebrities and hosting concerts and events. You navigate public policies, safety, you manage a big budget. You wear a lot of hats, Mr. Beck, and maybe reflect on how did your FFA experience help plant some seeds that prepared you for this role?
Well, thank you for asking that. And I can get a little bit emotional thinking about it, but I was very blessed. I was very fortunate. See, all I ever wanted to do was farm. And growing up at the end of the gravel road and being able to see opportunities. This not just because this is an FFA podcast. I call upon those experiences and those educational, professional development opportunities I had as a young person to do what I do on a daily basis. I serve a lot of boards. I'm getting ready for a board meeting, having a board meeting, or getting over a board meeting. I chair a lot of meetings. I've had 3 meetings a day where I share the meetings. Working with people, running a meeting, just a basic parliamentary procedure guidelines. I have some pretty basic principles. I try to be friendly with everybody. My goal is to be fair with everybody, but I'm firm in what I believe in, what I stand for. And some things you don't compromise. I reflect back to things you learn in FFA. You learn from your family. You learn from your faith and your church involvement. So those are things that you carry with you for life. To be able to do impromptu speaking. We do a lot of press conferences. You get a lot of questions. You get questions that you could never anticipate being asked. Being able to think and make decisions. Record keeping, so basic to what's in the classroom on agriculture, vocational education. Record keeping, keeping good records, understanding financials, understanding how you make a profit, how you document those things. All these things that may be boring to some people, they may seem a little bit bureaucratic to others, they make a difference. And so those are very sound growth principles that you learn from lots of sources, but FFA was a major role with me in doing that. Learning how to convey your points, your thoughts, your priorities, whether it be a government leader, a non-agricultural person, a business leader, a sponsor, all those things come into play. And in being an FFA, just a goodwill tour as a state officer, meeting with sponsors, working with them, learning what's important to them. And a lot of that's listening, not speaking. I've often said you can't sell something people don't want, don't buy. So you have to understand what's important to them. One of the things I say, and I'm not perfect, but I want to say this, always being truthful and honest. Your word's your bond. That may be a little bit old fashioned to some people, but I think it still works today in the business environment. People respect that. Even when you disagree, and I encourage our team where I'm negotiating a contract, if you get to know the people sitting across the table from you, if you respect from where they're coming from, if they can develop some level of respect for what you're trying to advocate for, you can find a way to get to a yes. You can figure out how to solve problems. It may not be easy, it may be challenging, but if you understand people are being honest in their discussion and what they're trying to accomplish, I think there's a way to get to a yes. I say often that we all make decisions based on information we have. All of us don't have the same information. And I'm a strong supporter of education. I'm a believer in knowledge and wisdom, going back to that FFA. But the bottom line is that we have a lot of people that know a lot know a lot. Unfortunately, all of it's not accurate. It's not always true. It's not truthful. So you have to understand how to navigate that and get things back on point. Make decisions based on the facts. Do your research. Put the time involved with it if it's important. So a lot of these life skills you develop over a career, I think back to the root of those, how we use those in our family, on the farm, and in FFA. So much of that can be beneficial for years to come. And I look around, I have opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and occasionally I can stumble on that FFA experience, and we celebrate that. I did that when I was dealing with legislature, dealing with people in Congress, dealing with people with business, at all levels of government. So even when we were involved many years as a volunteer, chairing the host committee, recruiting FFA to Louisville, Kentucky, that gave me an opportunity to market and sell something that I believed in. I had a bank president here in town. We had to raise over $1 million a year, over 900 volunteers helping with that. After it was over with, we're doing a debrief in his office. He said, David, he said, we spend a lot of money every year recruiting people around the country. Through you and FFA, you just brought the best and brightest right here in our own backyard. Yeah. Made an impact on him. And he had never worn the blue and gold jacket. He didn't understand it, but he sure had an education about people being here. So everybody that wears that jacket is an ambassador. You're telling the story. You're the example for the business community, elected leaders, but also for those green hands out there. They'll look up to you. I remember being in camp in FFA my freshman year, but also chairing the camp council my last year there and talking to those green hands. They looked up to us like we were basketball athletes, but you realize you're having an impact on those young people. And then to see them later in life and see where they wind up, what their profession career might be. To me, that's meaningful. And I'll say this, if I may, one of the reasons I wanted FFA to come to Louisville, Kentucky as a national convention was that small chapters can't afford to send maybe 2 or 3 people. But I thought if we had it here in Kentucky, a lot more Kentucky youth would be able to be involved, at least for one day. They may not have been competing, but they may have been to the trade show, the general session, heard a speaker, saw a contest that they observed. It can hopefully encourage them and motivate them for their future success.
Well, I hope we have a lot of FFA members listening in their classrooms right now, hearing you talk about the importance that just being an FFA member has on you in the here and now, but in your future career and for many, many years to come. And it's evident your passion and your appreciation for your time in FFA and how it's guided you in your professional career. Yeah.
May I add something else to that?
Absolutely.
Being able to accept the opportunity. Being able to say yes. When your advisor encourages you to stretch yourself to be in that contest, study for that speech contest, be able to say yes. And I'll give you an example of saying yes as an adult. I was at a restaurant having dinner with my wife in Louisville one night, and Harold Workman, the gentleman that I respected for years, that was in this role many years before me, he was having dinner with his wife in that restaurant too, Ruth Chris in Eastern Jefferson County. I walked by his table when we arrived that evening, and as he was leaving, he stopped by. He said, David, I want to ask you if you'll help me do something. I said, sure, Harold, what would it be? He said, I want you to help me recruit FFA from Kansas City to Louisville, Kentucky. I said, Harold, you and I grew up going to national convention. They'll never leave Kansas City. He said, David, they won't unless we ask them. And I said yes to his committee. Example of another leader reaching out to someone else like me. And so I said yes. He encouraged me to be enthusiastic about it. And I did. I accepted that challenge. And so opportunities will come in different ways, different fashions, through different people. Be willing to say yes if it's something you believe in. You might be surprised at the outcome.
That is rich advice. It really is. And I appreciate you sharing that with us and our listeners. I do
And
want to mention you are a Forever Blue donor to the Kentucky FFA Foundation. And for those that may not know what that means, our Forever Blue endowment allows different people to make gifts of all sizes to Kentucky FFA that we invest, and a portion of those funds are returned annually to the local FFA chapter of their choice. And so, Lyon County, where you are from, their Forever Blue endowment is a great story, and it's one that we get to tell often. You know, Lyon County it's a small place, and the alumni there are just so talented in so many ways, and in a lot of different parts of our country and in Kentucky too. So in about 3 years, just so our listeners know, in about 3 years, you and your community raised more than $150,000 in endowment from all local alumni, and that is incredible. And you chose again to say yes and make that investment in FFA. So why is Lyon County so special to you, and why were you happy to join in on that special project?
Well, very small school. Only had 60 in my graduating class for the entire county. FFA was not really something I never considered not being a part of. It's part of my heritage, my family. I want to be involved with it. And in fact, I got to brag on Lyon County. They had the state championship basketball team this year.
They
So
did.
I went to the last home game in that little gym and be able to watch them play and rep on that Friday and Saturday was amazing. So I celebrated with them, and wonderful young people and a great coach and a great community support. I remember my dad. I was always interested. I farmed lots of different things, raised barley and dark tobacco and livestock, but livestock was my deal. I was always interested in livestock. And I remember my dad sponsoring the livestock judging team in my home county, and never really thought a lot about that until I watched him there one night presenting the award. And then I realized that was his way of making investment, something that was important to him to see that continue. And then I had the benefit of vocational agriculture teachers that had passion and what young people and stretched us, caused us to try to dream about what the possibilities might be. Often said, if you had Mr. Fowler, for example, as your advisor, when you graduate, you just didn't get a high school diploma, you got an education because he taught you a lot about life. And we continued to stay in contact well after graduation. And he was always interested in how things were going in Frankfurt and in Washington, and continued to engage with Mr. Fowler and his family. Clyde Grace Jr., another wonderful ag teacher. Gary Schaefer, another wonderful ag teacher that I had in addition to my father-in-law. So, in fact, I was working, farming, going to school. Never went to summer school, but I was trying to get out 3.5 years with just my undergraduate. And I went ahead and stayed that I like 4 hours to be able to do that, 6 hours to graduate that way. And I went ahead and did my student teaching. Not that I had the skills to be a teacher. I just wanted to be able to do that. And that was probably the best semester of my college days, was doing student teaching. I did it in Tree County. I had, one of those things they ask you, what do you know the most about livestock? What do you know the least about horticulture? Well, you're going to teach horticulture.
Exactly.
That's what you do. And so I spent a lot of time in the extension office and library after class, getting ready for my curriculum for the next day. But I had a night class. I had all 4 grades, worked with them. I raised tobacco, but never had burnt a plant bed. I mean, I never had gas a plant bed. We always burn our plant beds. So I did that with the class because that particular chapter had a tobacco base to raise revenue for their chapter. And also, I learned a lot through that as well. Hopefully had some kind of influence on young people by doing that. So I enjoyed the educational process. It was good for me. But my small chapter, to see those young people compete with anybody in the world with the skill sets they obtain and develop, if they'll utilize those. And really, it's lifelong learning. Hopefully, learn something there to inspire them to give back and be involved with others.
Well, you've left quite a legacy there as well, and it's important. So thank you.
It touches my heart to hear you say that when you said, you can compete with anybody in the world. And your community and your classmates, you will have competed with everyone in the world. You know, we had the former CEO of National FFA as one of your classmates, provosts of universities, presidents of universities. So many incredible folks were a part of that tiny community in Lyon County. And it touches my heart to see you all give back and support it. I just approved the budget this year for the annual check from your endowment that goes to Lyon County FFA. And this year it will fund their trip to State Fair entirely. So none of those students pay anything, and it'll also fund their trip to National FFA Convention entirely. So you are still paving a way for those students in that community to be able to compete with anybody in the world, and they are. And it is just, it touches my heart to get to be a small piece of that story. It's very special. So,
well, give you a lot of credit because having the idea, the concept to bring that forward. We've got an amazing team there with the office that you run and those that work with you to make all those kind of things happen. And they do make a difference. They do make a difference in individuals' lives. And the words that are spoken, the dollars that are invested, the example that's demonstrated pays dividends time after time. So it's rewarding to see that.
yeah. And shout out to Lyon County basketball. 4 of basketball teammates were FFA members.
Yes, yes.
So that's great too. Well, Mr. Beck, we ask all of our listeners or all of our guests, we ask them the same 3 questions at the end. And we ask, one is, what is the best piece of leadership advice that you have ever received?
Listening, giving the fact, and making decisions.
When I think of you, you are the just epitome of class and poise and professionalism. I always think that whenever I bring state FFA officers to a meeting you're running or we're visiting, I always try to point out some of the special things that you do to give things just an extra piece of special touch. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but just everything you do, it's clear that you've thought about it. You're not quick with your words, or you are measured in what you say, and it really matters. And all of the things that you do when you hold a meeting, when you're just greeting people at an event, it's very clear that you've taken the time to think about how you want to put your foot forward. And I want to tell you, I appreciate that so much.
My goodness, that's humbling. Thank you so much. It's very kind of you.
Yeah.
I'll share an experience, if I may, at first time. When I was very fortunate, I had 3 opportunities for employment as I graduated. And one was to stay in Trigg County. The superintendent at the FFA back invited me to stay on, but I'd already accepted another position. And after I'd been with the Farm Bureau for about a year, Mr. John Kuhn was the CEO, and eventually when I retired, I was in that same position. He gave a young man the opportunity, and we were having dinner, and he said, "David, you remember the interview?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And he said, "You remember any of the questions I asked?" I said, "Well, I think I may recall some." He said, "You remember me asking you if speaking in front of people bothered you?" And he said, "You paused," and he said, "You remember what you said?" And he reminded me and said, "Yes, it bothers me, but if that's what I need to do, I can do it." And he said, "David, I think you're the only one that I've ever interviewed in my entire career that ever told me the truth. Everybody always says that, oh yeah, I can do that." But he said, you paused and thought about it. And he said, to me, that said a lot because you were being truthful with me. And if you really care about what you're doing, then you can speak to it. And you can do that. And I remember back to that. Some people may have said, "Well, you should have said, oh yeah, I can do that." Well, I was a little timid about it, but that resonated with him. And I met him on a goodwill tour for SFA, and we had lunch along with 2 other officers. And he gave me his business card, and he said, "Young man, when you get ready to graduate from college, drop me a note. I might have something." And so maybe that goodwill tour through FFA, it made that connection. And I was very fortunate for that opportunity. So you never know who you're going to meet and how that impression may be. But I've always felt that it's important to recognize our industry. And unfortunately, there are those in society that sometimes kind of put agricultural down. They don't understand production agriculture. They don't understand what farmers do. And so I've always felt like it's important that we try to conduct ourselves in a way that will, not from an arrogant standpoint, but regain respect for our industry and what we're trying to accomplish. Another thing Mr. Coon told me, he said, David, that business card you have, that logo will get you into pretty much any office in Frankfort, Washington you want to go in. But will you get to go back or not? Or those that follow you get to get in, is how you conduct yourself. And that resonates with me often too, is that you're laying the groundwork for your future access, but also those that follow you.
It is. FFA opens doors for so many students, and it continues to open doors for many of our members that we see past their time in the Blue Jacket. It continues to open those doors. Mr. Beck, we always also ask our guests to shout out someone that has really poured into them. You know, the FFA Foundation is a philanthropy, and we know philanthropy is just all about giving back, and we know people give back with their time a lot. So who is someone that you would just like to shout out and thank for pouring into you and giving their time to you?
My goodness, the list is long. The list
I
is
know,
long.
the hard one.
Yeah, I think back to my family. I think back to my vocational agriculture teacher that I made reference to earlier, but also people like Mr. Coon, Mr. Kessler, those that I had an opportunity to work with for years and learn from my experience in the Farm Bureau. But there's many individuals that I have benefited from, learned from. I had a Sunday school teacher I was very fond of, Dr. Elwood Taylor, had been a minister for many years. And as an adult, he was my Sunday school teacher, just a wonderful gentleman, learned so much from him. A man of strong faith and a lot of leadership. And so I think of a lot of those down through the years. But I believe that we have to give back both of our time and resources. Our treasure, as many people refer to nowadays, but it's kind of like tithing on your income with your time as well. So I think we do have a responsibility to do that. And so I've been blessed to have opportunities to serve in different capacities and different boards, different nonprofits and for-profit boards. You never know when you're there for a purpose. I think there's different leaders for different times. And I look at that and see, we never know when it may be our turn, our time to really be the problem solver, to be engaged, to help connect the dots. It's not always the person at the head of the room. Sometimes the person in the back row is there supporting those in leadership roles, asking the tough questions, helping make the right decision when others may be a little bit timid. And so you can learn from a lot of people. And I'm always learning and trying to listen and learn more for the future.
Right. Thank you for mentioning those great folks. We always ask the last question, which is, what is something that you're loving that's helping you grow? And it can be anything, a habit, a book, just something that you're doing that you're enjoying right now that's pouring into you.
Well, I got to say, if I may, as a proud grandfather, I have 5 grandchildren, and they inspire me so much. They inspire me about life, legacy, doing the right thing, whatever you can do to prepare their future in this world, this society. At my age, I think it's important that we give back and we not be timid or bashful in trying to make change in our society, whether it be government or whatever it might be, for the future of young people like that. So my grandchildren are pretty much a priority, and they are a constant reminder to me of why we need to do the right thing for the right reasons. And so that's very much an inspiration to me.
So good. So special.
Mr. Beck, thank you for being with us today and just for leading so well. For what you have done, it truly has mattered. It's mattered to me in my FFA experience as a member, getting to be a part of so many things you had a hand in. Now as the foundation director, I know Ruth-Ann can say the same thing. It's an honor to get to work with you and your team all the time. And I'm just thank you for who you are. And I'm glad you were on our podcast.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I want to say I respect both of you. I watched you grow and develop in the role you play, and you're making a difference on a daily basis. So I know every day's not easy, but remember, you're making a difference. And I encourage you to continue down that path.
Well, thank you. That really does mean a lot. Well, and thank you all for listening. And we hope to see you next week on the next episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders. Growing Kentucky's Leaders is a podcast brought to you by the Kentucky FFA Foundation. Our music is performed by Bourbon County FFA member Joe Fritch. Artwork is by Julie Fritch Creative. Your hosts are Sheldon McKinney and Ruth Ann Fink, and you can find us on all social platforms at Kentucky FFA.